Hi, this is Ramos Reviews, the channel where I quickly express my thoughts and opinions about all types of movies. Today I'll be looking at 2022's Scream, directed by MattBettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett. As a kid, I wasn't much of a horror fan, but for the past 5 years or so, I slowly but surely began watching and becoming a fan of the horror genre and the many classics it has. Now, Chucky may be my favorite horror movie villain, but Wes Craven's group of connected meta movies is my favorite horror franchise of all time. That's why when I first heard that they were making another sequel for the Scream franchise, I had so many mixed feelings about the very existence of possibly making a 5th movie. I love the original Scream. It's one of, if not my favorite horror movie of all time. But it was that way due to the amazing relatable writing of Kevin Williamson and the direction of one of the goats of the horror genre, Wes Craven. In my eyes and to many other fans, the idea of thinking of making a Scream sequel without Craven just felt blasphemous.
I hope they never make a Scream 5 since Wes Craven wouldn't be involved.
Though, the film's directorial job was given to the same people who directed Ready or Not, so slowly over time I did begin to get more hopeful over the movie. Then, the biggest sign of hope happened. In an interview, David Arquette stated that he truly believed that Scream 5 would be a love letter to the late and great Wes Craven. After that, I was sold. The fact that he said that, I just had to see this so-called love letter to believe it. And man, what a fucking love letter it was. So, once again, I don't have a clear rating system, but I do mainly base my ratings on things like how well it's made, like special effects, directing, acting, how good it's written, like the story, characters, and creativity, and how entertaining and enjoyable I found the movie to be overall. Now, if you agree with me, that's great, and if you don't, that's fine. Everyone has opposite opinion, and this is just mine. Now, let's get to the breakdown. 25 years after the original Woodsboro murders, a new Ghostface dons the mask and begins to target a group of teens who are all somehow related to the past killers or victims of the past killings. Now, new final girl Sam and the legacy heroes have to once again put an end to the killings of the new Ghostface before they manage to make another true story for the Stab franchise. Now, first things first, if you don't want any spoilers, then don't watch this review until you've seen Scream 5, because the first thing we're going to talk about in this movie is who Ghostface is. One of the biggest issues in the Scream franchise is usually shitty choices for killers, their backstories, and their motives. However, here they finally learned and managed to choose two killers that almost rival Billings do. The Ghostfaces in Scream 5 are a duo of psychotic fans who met on a Stab subreddit. They noticed, like many other horror franchises, that the series of Stab was slowly dying, so their motive was to revive it by trying to make one like the original, based on a true story. And I'm super happy to say that the Ghostfaces and their acting in this film do in fact bring the vibe of the iconic original duo that is Billings 2. The Ghostfaces in Scream 5 are probably the most deceiving and scary Ghostfaces by far. The mask-wearing killers in this film are Amber Freeman and Richie Kirsch, played by The Boys' Jack Quaid and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's Mikey Madison. Both killers are great since their personalities are both so scary but different. Richie alone feels like the perfect combination of both the OG killers' personalities. He's cool, clever, and composed like Billy, and is also crazy, goofy, and playful like Stu, helping give a vibe to the motive that almost feels like the original. Then we get Amber, who's also great because she has this type of creepy mentality that shows us that on the outside she's a very chill individual, but once you find out about her true self, she's loud, psychotic, and looks like she had fun being the deceitful murderer of her best friends. Almost as if mentally she was playing an exaggerated real-life version of Among Us. And not only does the movie feel like the original because its killers are returning setting again, but because of the fact that it's a requel, which is a huge improvement from Scream 4. Now, the reason I say that is because if you look deeply into Scream 4, it's the film that stands out from the rest, and it's not the fact that it was made in 2010 or had that shitty filter. I'm talking about the concept and rules the characters and killers follow. I felt that Scream 2 and 3 did well to give us the same meta commentary that the original Scream had, because in those sequels, they focus on the concept that the killer is trying to make a sequel or trilogy, which is exactly where Scream 4 went wrong. Scream 4 was logically ahead of its time. It tried to be a requel in 2010, a time where there were no requels, which means no cliches or rules for that specific type of movie. So instead, they tried to focus on the rules of the modern horror films of the 2000s, but the issue with that choice as well was that there weren't really any. For the slasher subgenre, there was literally nothing new except the introduction of more on-screen gore. In the case of Scream 4, they did exactly that.
We're gonna go scary. Saw 4.
Ugh, I saw that in theaters. It sucks. It's not scary, it's gross. I hate all that torture porn shit.
But since there were no new cliches, they just went with the stupid logical rule of
the only surefire way to survive a modern horror movie, you pretty much have to be gay. I'm gay.
Fortunately, Scream 5 was made at a time where requels have existed with films like Halloween 2018, Terminator Dark Fate, Star Wars The Force Awakens, etc. So finally, there are actual requel rules to go off of since they're back to focusing on the fact that it's a continuation and not that it's in a new decade. Now, according to requel rules, we do in fact get to see OG locations, fresh takes on classic scenes, and return of the legacy characters, Dewey, Gale, and Sidney fucking Prescott. I truly feel like both Dewey and Gale are my favorite versions of each other in the series. Even as an older man, David Arquette still brings some Dewey-like comedy, even while being usually sad. However, he still gets the mature badass moments that he rightfully deserves, which helps make the brutal death of Dewey, the series' comic relief, so difficult to watch. And the fact that they had it be instantly followed with seeing the new empathetic and wiser Gale have a heartbreaking meltdown was just so emotionally painful to sit through. It's even all the more tragic when you realize that their last interaction together was their long-awaited reconciliation. Though, just like Andrew in No Way Home being the beacon of hope, here comes Sidney Prescott out to take things into her own hands, who even as a mother doesn't stop her from still being the same strong and badass final girl that she's always been. Still, since this movie is a requel, that means that these legacy characters are mostly just mentors, which means that the protagonist is no longer Sydney, but instead is Sam Carpenter. As all Scream fans know, all the movies start with a phone call and the celebrity death. Our celebrity this time is Jenna Ortega as Tara Carpenter, but surprisingly she doesn't actually die in the intro or in the entirety of the movie. She instead gets super injured for trying to save her best friend despite the potential danger that can come to her, showing us that this scared girl is a genuinely good person, making the attack on her painful to watch. And even though she isn't the main protagonist, her acting stole every scene that she was in and gave a realistic motivation for the true protagonist to defeat Ghostface, her sister Sam Carpenter, played by Melissa Barrera. Sam is a mentally strong and selfless person, making her immediately likable, and even more so with the sisterly bond that she has with Tara, nowhere close to the likability that Joe had. Then, after already being really likable, she then gets an interesting backstory, revealing that she's the daughter of Billy Loomis. Now, usually retcons like that make no sense and are the MacGuffin of the films that they're in, but here it's just a backstory that the protagonist just so happened to have, and is a reason for it to have an absolutely satisfying and intense scene. Plus, Sam would be 25 years old or so timeline-wise, it does actually add up. Besides, the fact that it finally gives C. Ulrich a logical reason to reprise his role after 25 years, with some pretty great de-aging that rivals Disney-made films, is pretty great to see. Also, the group of friends are easily the best new supporting characters since the original. Unlike the rest of the Scream sequels, all the characters are realistic, sensible characters who are all mostly likable and entertaining. And due to them acting like real people, the potential danger and deaths of the characters give serious emotional reactions, since they weren't just there to die. They were on screen and actually stayed long enough to make us actually care for them. The writers intelligently knew that killing only a few of them was enough. If the best characters get injured, they can keep them for a sequel and kill them off there instead of having to make us equally care about a new cast, who are also all pretty good, but overall still don't personally compare to Mindy Meeks Martin. None of them are really bad, but they just don't stand out as much as Mindy, the movie nerd character that's supposed to be the stand-in for Randy, who completely succeeds in doing so. She definitely feels like the new Randy that we've been looking for. She's funny, goofy, smart, cool, and friendly. Way better than the super suspicious ass Charlie Walker, which is another great thing about this movie. Unlike the rest of the Scream sequels, you can actually try to logically figure out who the killers are. Back then, they might as well have played spin the wheel to pick the antagonist, but here they actually have actual clues in a way that doesn't make everyone super sus red herrings. Like legit, not a single character was overly suspicious, stupid, or had an exaggerated personality, except maybe the jock who nearly died for being horny and was also literally named Chad. Even Judy Hicks wasn't overly suspicious anymore. Deputy Hicks is no longer the exaggerated potential killer from Scream 4, and instead now a typical soccer mom looking sheriff whose lifelike relationship with her son, Wes, gives such a heartbreaking and shocking scene due to the events that led to it. Oh, and by the way, if you're a Scream or just an all-around horror movie fan, there are a lot of references that you'll love. They have Easter eggs like West and Carpenter, random movie name drops like The Babadook and It Follows, and a cameo from personal horror legends James A. Janice and Chelsea Rebecca. Though what I didn't love was the fact that there was a pretty big unexplained plot hole and some scenes that were just there to keep the plot moving. Tara getting mad at Sam over such a mentally heavy secret felt a bit unjustified, and like I said, I do like requels, but the fact that it is one also makes it pretty obvious who the killers are at the end. I legit figured it out just from putting two things together. In the original, the love interest and the friend who owns the house of the final act are the killers. So since it's a requel, I figured they'd probably do the same thing. Lastly, they give an unexplained BS reason of how Amber possibly could have figured out that Sam was Billy's daughter. The main enormous reason as to why this movie is revolving around Sam in the first place. Like legit, it reminded me of...
Somehow Palpatine returned.
So on that note, let's see what it earned at the rating. Even though Wes Craven didn't direct it and Kevin Williamson didn't write it, they still managed to make it feel like the truly great work that they made in the past. This requel is the most well-written, funny, emotionally driven, scary, bloody, and best acted sequel in the franchise, which is why Scream 2022 earns itself a 9 out of 10, with recommendation to watch if you enjoyed movies like Halloween 2018, Ready or Not, or Happy Death Day. Thank you for watching this Ramos review on MattBettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett's Scream 2022. If you want me to review a movie, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you enjoyed this review, please leave a like and subscribe. It would help a lot and I would thoroughly appreciate it. Anyways, I'll talk to you in my next review.